Hello, America. This is an important announcement about the jab, but it's about juxtapose alphas, body. This is important. I say alphabet. See alpha in the root. See bet as the double root in the word alphabet. So there might be other applications by it, and maybe most people don't know it. For example, too, we see the story of Cain and Abel. For example, everyone left out the value of what came before that, which is the part of the Old Testament where it says only right here is where it's needed to be understood and to defend it up to that spot. Before that, for example, it says where the names of the people of the sciences will come together. For example, and people don't even know that because they defend their care for it or how other people out of sequence the book. Then they defend their emotions or passions or not relative to that insidious sequence, in factory nature. And what's the subject? What is true always, not denying the slightest exception, is the subject. If we're talking about science, if we're using science to interpret things, see, we have criminal insidiousness natures of the names of the sciences. So they do insidious things like try to, the same way the first part of the Quran says the same thing. It says all that someone needs to do to be a good Muslim is to be honest if they're going to call the identity of the hyper simultaneous Allah or not. And that's a transliteration of a transliteration. But this is also what nature shows us. See, nature's five distinct parts of itself as sequence / simultaneous nature. Simultaneously three-way bound distinctly from how five ways grouped. Bound that way. While not bound. See, nature uses that to keep us. It uses the difference between hot and cold or the similarity. As about the simultaneous, not just about warmth. Showing us we don't mess with Earth's position in zero gravity. People speak about strategy and they want to kill out the strategy. So we're not going to go into that. We know about this. We know what this is about. We know these people, they believe this or that. Nature answers our questions. See, but nature uses lists and correlation nature in ways, if anyone tries to appreciate that, even if there are a majority of people, they are sensed and they are hurt. As part of the answer, where and how there is there are inherent questions, and that are grouped too, and no one ever addresses them. So we have to address the hyper of it, and no one ever addresses them because everyone came through abridged sciences. That, for example, ones that communicated other than our founders communicated, to have communicated for themselves, and for the Constitution unabridged, and for the value of Marbury versus Madison, which I was taught by an accomplished pro se litigant, that the meaning of Marbury versus Madison is, quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. This is also where and how we could observe self-value in a number of ways. How states were left criminally foreign influenced originally and still. Self-value when people blame things like prejudice, where and how it is assigned not only capable of being, and or they assigned the difference and or the exceptions to be a part of that array, blaming other things, others, or selves, for where and how the breaching method that was involved with the torture and extortion of our founders, for example, that we're supposed to treat honestly. And this brings up how they were sickly, distinctly fact-cheaping nature enslaved, otherwise to be sensed by the nature of the laws that were set up. That's why it's important to address, not just because it's bad, oh, it's because it hurt someone. It's more than that. It's because the word was, in other words, the Constitution was abridged because they left entrenched roles with that. And that was roles with if you sense anyone around, even a group breaking the laws which were designed to hurt everyone, even when helping them, even with exceptions that were sense it through their own people. Everywhere the species volume is since semi-ancient times, since before modern religions, messengers. What do you think they were all up in arms about? The names of the sciences became criminally foreign influence, tactically criminally foreign influence. There are proofs that they were forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, not realizing in defenses of themselves, where they would have to counter things like criminal foreign influences and or like criminal insidiousness. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to do it wrong, and then to defend that, and to self-value that, and to be trained to it because they sustained that before our founders were born. And they knew that a nature of independence would have to grow. Simultaneously, natures of unity would have to grow. And that would make, the unity will force, in other words, and they kept it so they will be able to measure and maintain who is the one behind it. And then bang it down, quality of fact, nature as collusions. Incapable of affording to be, let alone to protract the revelations that come from the uses of short words and truths not being used for lies and not valuing others using those truths for lies, even if everyone agrees to believe and believes the wrong things about what actually happened in the beginning, like especially critical of things like / hypercritical things like Native Americans had already had this preaching method sustained upon them since before our founders were born. It had already employed uses of already ancient from that. Uses of words like uses of phrases like divide and conquer, to measure and maintain, other things, others ourselves, blamed on others, blame for what the breaching method caused and causes, which it knew correctly nature would increasingly demonstrate to an honest soul, an honest mind, honest science, a breaching method, a human fact. There are the people that are reciting evidences that say that our founders had roles with slavery are leaving out how our founders left us evidence that they wanted nothing to do with it. They had to hide their roles with the revolution. Even after the fact, they had to hide the actual motivation. They had to counter-extort the other founders at 13 positions in more than 13 colonies themselves divided. And Native Americans were still divided from themselves. How to counter as fact-keeping nature. That which wasn't letting the colonists or themselves make anything but collusions with the positive treatments syntactically and or the negative treatments to keep screened the identity of relationship to itself that it was forcing and its existence, a hyper criminal enterprise, hyper transnational, hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will, that built modern countries' names, A through Z, partially more ways than they did, as it did from latter semi-ancient times forward. And it is more probable and is more practical in many fields of reception outside of the actual text of the religious books, except for the parts where it says this is the only part that matters. With the Old Testament, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together, and with the Quran, it says even if people are honest about it and they don't want to call the name of the hyper simultaneous Allah, it says to love them, and it obligates the person if they want to be a Muslim to be a good Muslim. You're not supposed to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. Nature itself will answer what you have to do. See, the other parts of the Quran and the other parts of the Old Testament that has to do with where and how the quality of fact human nature is forced to ignore the value of what came first. True. See, they want to keep assigned as a distinct. They're distinctly hurt by the breaching method singular / group because it comes through. It employed everyone blaming other things other than themselves. And then they're going to make defenses of phrases like practical reason, even if they don't use that phrase. To use the phrase of Immanuel Kant or pure reason. If Immanuel Kant was alive, he probably would agree that hyper distinctly, but also non-distinctly, the hyper simultaneous is pure reason / practical reason, and is practical reason / pure reason as the actual identity that is discernibly itself in ways greater than and more finite than how there are 5 parts of time that we can see that with the extent of the past we know is one part. It's true always. With the extent active grouped reality / realities that we know about now to an extent, true always. And there's an extent of the future that we know about now, true always. These are 3 parts of time that are grouped. There was also that part of time that is beyond that we know we don't know about. We know it exists, though. That is another 4th. And there is the value of what it actually was. And as itself, the identity of the hyper simultaneous. And math and each of the sciences, they are about relativity. See, we have theory defended simultaneously using criminally foreign influence factor, reliant, self-valued on criminally foreign influence factor, nature, quality, aspect, and nature. Nature such as criminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer. I'm not police, I'm not a judge. They recorded themselves originally and still, as our founders left us to demonstrate, as we're taught through the nature of the church. Forgiveness is something that we're supposed to learn too, apart from the book. I'm not saying it in other words. This knew the difference between how the people who preserve the books of the religions and or the people who attack them and or the exceptions. This preaching method needs them as a collusion / as, and with uses of exceptions and exception nature. See, so where we had short words that come with revelations, like we have black people's whites of eyes. Not only does nature telling us what color black and white are about, a whole bunch of ways at once, in other words, but also about exceptions, exception nature, how he uses this hyper additionally from any ways we could. Even if we make them up, they're going to have 3 identities of possession over the smallest finite detail of what we make up, over all group details, and over the simultaneous volume. See, the questions, what is it about? Is it species volume, individual, finite? grouped different slash S, ages, areas, locations, sexes, even the birds. I'm not sure about insects. In other words, it is showing us how to describe this with short words. It is showing us how to describe and to discern and value the difference between what is constant and what is variable and relative to itself. The identity of hyperrelativity, a singular identity of relativity to what can be simultaneously positive or not. For example, reason that appreciates the value of how Native Americans had sustained against them the same exact breaching method that was slash is still involved with the tortures of, the extortion of, and the fact-keeping nature of slavery of our founders. They're not even alive. They told us to get the Constitution on a bridge. They're lying about them in our faces, and they're using what the breaching method forced to be manifest with an as syntax. The scientists share an identity. Therefore, everyone is a voice for the law. Oh, but I'm not a formal body of the law. In other words, plus they never addressed too how the prisons are involved with interbranch under the guises of corrections. Forgiveness is to not leave out how the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, as volumes, as criminal insidiousness nature, and or the difference between that and the three branches of government and or the exceptions tied to them, not just as intelligence bodies, and not just with foreign bodies. Foreign and domestic intelligence are shared here on and off campuses, and all rights to lie, for example, to use um, a phrase of reported of James Comey, a former FBI director. He's also involved with the former FBI director, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his, Thaddeus Skabowski, Dominic Lapriata, and another John LeConte, I think is his name. And right before 2006 case, they have roles with the Thaddeus Skabowski and people on off the Fox Connecticut News building and Hartford, with names all along Route 3 in conjunctions to the state judicial branch officers into that, who have been roles with predicate acts with facts, where and how this is what this is about, other having been assigned the meaning of black and white, and other having been assigned simultaneously for additional motivations, note simultaneously. The cause of that. And see, that is functional because it knew correctly nature showing the honest science a breaching method, of some value, and use of it with those crazy laws against everyone, and or the crazy other natures of criminal insidiousness nature in bodies, individually and grouped, like as criminal enterprises, including the private ones originally still. It's not just there was a breaching method. So we have not addressed the torture and the extortion of George Washington the way we were directed to. Not just, especially the soldiers. So they have top down, simultaneously bottom up. Everyone's fake with the descriptions of their own emotions and motivations and or about others. And they get away with this because everyone had roles with predicate acts with facts when they were little kids before they took an oath and pretend it doesn't matter because they were little kids. They were involved with identity theft, fraud, slander method, which is also switching. It's putting the identities of kids. You know, it's making kids act fake motivations because it's how long it showed this. It showed them how to what they already did and how others could discern this. So it made self-value roles hurting everyone. Self-value hurting themselves. Otherwise, that body is sensed and hurt. So if they describe the hurt proper, the sense more, and everyone makes opinions. That's why it's important to not ignore the short words of people. It's not, and the only three branches of government. Of course, they're still switching names, forging names. Now, it's not to say, oh, guilt. See, the difference between them and the overt criminal enterprises, timed collusions with them, confessions intercities that were connected, all kinds of crazy things like murders with connections, timed uses of them conscious. World Trade Center predicate acts. Though they had WFSB attached me a fake conversation about World Trade Center. They're influencing social companies, social networks to speak about algorithms and to defend that, leaving out how correlation uses lists and ways too innumerable. See what Judge Napolitano says about the Ninth Amendment. So, in other words, and then they want us to have a nature of debate where they can't afford the quality of fact should be nature necessary to defend ourselves. And so there's like, you know, monopolies, there are hyper monopolies. The board, the originally and still, there is simultaneously distinct three ways. Criminally foreign influence / tactically delusions raw. The bar itself, because lawyers, all sides in criminal and civil cases, the news at the same time, and the names that work at the interbranch locations. At the same time, the difference between that and their family members and their neighbors and everyone next to everyone. This is a little method that screens the foreign bodies and the motivations where and how it employed other things others and ourselves blamed, like wealth. And where's the wealth? Associated with the people involved with a whole bunch of different countries with Central Connecticut State University, Trinity College, that were recorded totally unconnected people connected for themselves, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. All sides in criminal and civil cases, and the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it in Manhattan, right next to the World Trade Center attack, shortly before it, a bunch of ways, and long term with the same ones that were already criminally foreign influence. There were kids involved with identity theft, fraud, slingers right on and off campuses, attaching kids that aren't even in the same schools, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to them, time uses of it, where and how consciously, originally and still, the differences, there were collusions at all locations but to discern this, you have to allow it to be valued. And where we can see all the conjunctions to it, where other things are being blamed, have been blamed, and why and how they got away with that, where and how they left out all the revelations that come from having black people / whites alive, and having the other species also with two eyes, also with exception, nature, and demonstration, the same thing. Its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that are three ways connected. Wherever there's an extent of that which is true always that we could actually discern, it comes with its identity relationship to itself. Because anywhere the slightest piece of its complete self is, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, its complete identity of relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that. Again, only increasing as the identity. That is the only increasing value of three natures of zero. Except for except for if and where and how we ignore a special difference. Then Earth's difference and or our difference. Earth's difference through as ours. We're hyperdimensionally its difference, but we are distinctly itself. See, only for so long, one species body could stay systems tactical ulterior from its own. Not just ulterior from its own tactical ulterior. This made self-value, uses of criminal insidiousness, natures of positive, and a means to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures. More and more, the only ones that were available were as if to self-value, criminal insidiousness, nature as a means to cause positive value nature progressions, action nature. Therefore, as fact should be nature. Therefore, and that was tactically simultaneously while the real causes of negative value nature progressions, action natures. For example, they tactically denatured and designed the scale and future perspectives of the suburbs before America's founders were born. They were designed for the fact should be nature, torture, extortion, and slavery of everyone sickly distinctly, to measure and maintain any identity of logic, appreciating how sickly non-distinctly it was hurting everyone. That made that effectually functionally sense, because it employed, it only means a whole bunch of different criminal natures of names A through Z, criminal insidiousness nature. You're speaking for the law if you are the body of law or not. So they want to do it in relative to instances, leaving out the value of what came first. And that's why they're even fabricating transcripts as conscious collusions. See, but this is also weird how they've been used remotely. Four criminal forms are involved here and there. But that is also used to screen the hyperform body. See, this method knew that other things, others, or selves would be blamed. Names therefore would be used wrong. Descriptions, time treatments, like see the value sequence true. Ugh. So, the republic for which we stand is a criminally foreign influenced version of itself that our founders left us to demonstrate since some ancient times. It is more probable too. It is more probable that pantheism being about more than one God, before people defended that and remembered it that way, it was a forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded, sustained, and then sustained phenomenon syntactically, where the ancients couldn't fathom anyone would forget how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in natures, it means out of nowhere. But how it requires, nature shows us, checking if it's criminal insidiousness natures are positive or not. See, if we search the laws, the nature of the laws, they state self-value, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents, tactically delusions wrought. They use torture methods, extortion methods, in fact, human nature, slavery methods of the courts and of the police form to get, and effectively uses how sickly non-distinctly is not discerned by anyone. And it's self-value not discerned by anyone, per where and how everyone uses the applications, the assignments of identity /IES, through and as systems tactical ulterior from the one that has us finite individual. one way, simultaneously grouped, active, two, and the third way, progressively, to the extent we know of the future now, grouped. It also comes with the value of truth before this, and the value of understanding that we don't. There's what we don't know simultaneously too, and understanding those five bodies of time, those five bodies of hyper positive. So there's a difference between hyper positive or positive that is criminal insidious nature, or positive could be a negative, could be a truth used for a lie, could be a truth being used by a lie for others, by others. And if the person knows or not, that would be sensed by someone. Like, in other words, it's a shell game. Roll with the word prejudice, and you then left out. In other words, that's not serious. People want to make serious being aggressive, or in other words, or being cold. You know, they have the branches of government. Some ways they are the victims, some way they are the victim predator, some way they're the hyper victims, some way they're hyper predators, some ways the news is. And the difference between that is also some way there's overt criminal enterprises with the same ones, same families, because they have the kids and the adults of families. And where differences being haven't been employed. Who knows each other or not? That difference is in the past you lied about. People have to lie about things. In other words, not just because lie or truth. I'm saying, for example, we have to, even if we could discern that, we have to still leave the hyper invisible, but still discernible. And so you guys didn't do this. In other words, because we would have discerned. Seriousness never spoke for the seriousness that we have to give the subject of, like, slavery. The nature of seriousness that it was given is used functionally by a breaching method to measure and maintain, other than itself blamed. A hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. We can charge this as countries A through Z together. In other words, but the only way it will work properly, in other words, the countries, they fight with each other with their names. They leave out how they never had possession of their names, individually grouped together. All they do is contrast each other. The last three presidents told truths, and they get hurt when they tell the truth through their own. Like about how they do things, and they make the news say this and that. Because they'll make subject treatments. They're told to lie, but they're told not to lie. In other words, they have roles with overt criminal enterprises on and off Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College, involved with all kinds of police forms and roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, regardless if they're legitimately with them or not, training police forms or what. See, this thing assigned identity treatments, black and white. I don't care if you're, they have this narrative of what black or white is. And with the assignments, with where and how the ground is manifest, you guys are not letting free speech, what our founders communicated. How they got away with this is by lying about having fake conversations with people. And worse, with the exceptions, differentially, till the difference between that is used. Where and how it is exploited consciously. There are qualities, aspects in nature of, time treatments and things like that they can't afford to be quality as. So they stay self-value criminal insidiousness, which is relative to where and how employed by the breaching method. Our predicate acts with facts roles. in all the ways they already recorded themselves self-valuing, where and how, like, for example, even with the arts, at the same the difference between the arts or the interbranch when they describe where and how actually overt criminal enterprises or corruption like criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influence uses of unions that charged or uncharged, claimed debatable or not. See, there's a quality of fact, human nature, or locations that was stayed and is stayed involved with torture, extortion, slander method, or that body is sensed. So they put people that were never in classes with us and people that were in classes with us, we never had conversations with each other too. In backgrounds with the interbranch on Facebook and foreign bodies with them, people involved with the witness protection program, all sides in criminal and civil cases, timed uses of corners leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense, connections made for them that they don't even understand because of how used remotely, our identities assignments. In other words, it uses not just functionally how people blame other things, others themselves, for what the breaching method caused. So greater than the value of a sum with uh, symbol, tool with calculus is the identity of the hyper simultaneous identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, which is inseparable from all things, box things. It is distinctly three ways grouped from how it is five ways grouped. And this comes with how it shows us to appreciate how it is distinctly hyper invisible from how it is distinctly invisible but still discernible. And the ancient languages were revealed to teach this way. Reason was revealed by nature to be understood this way. Many pray, boxing. I teach us things, but long, since some ancient times. Prepare our minds. So Romulus and Remus will see this as a science. It's more probable and practical, for example, where we take counter positions. In other words, see, well, this is a method that uses approach to any nature of industry, the wire crime action method, and motivation, and or the motivations for them, pretended legitimate, which are really one of the things that are non-distinctly where and how people were used remotely leading up to in the World Trade Center with foreign bodies. So don't forget when people, in other words, so constantly since founding, there are constantly investigators, even when not formally with investigation, with perspective. And this is a victim slash hyper victim method. It's a little magic trick method. Predicate acts with facts self value. It's a torture method, extortion method, slavery method. Makes people understate things. Makes them appear to overstate things. Even when they overstate things or understate things, makes the process of, you know, speaking about that right there with evidence the same, criminally foreign with the differences, uses. So they're making differences with sides, believing out how nature uses exceptions, exception nature. Hyper additionally, from any way we could. We can make way systems hyper additional that are other than its own. But it can only be criminal insidiousness nature as positive. It can only be negative to its identity of relationship to itself. And that is the only increasing value of that. Where and how nature showed to ancient pantheists there is one identity of hyper simultaneous. And Earth has a special difference that through humanity, but if we stay systems other, it forces Earth's difference as our own. From here, least of IDs. Worse than environmental change is nature. Denial, special difference is nature too. And nature is hyperditional nature. Its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that only increasing. And then that generated matter. And it is three identities of relationship to itself, not juxtaposed with matter. Three additional distinct identities of relationship to itself, juxtaposed with matter. Again, the finite active group and progressive. Values simultaneously, again, with two other, but also this is within the body / IES, but of itself. So where all the parts of your body have a semi-nature relationship to your complete self. Simultaneously, your complete self has a simultaneous relationship distinctly to the species body / the other species bodies, even the insects. And / it's the rest of itself, the hyper simultaneous, which is scientifically not just, in other words, it's the identity that of simultaneous nature that is distinct from the other species bodies, why they have two eyes and why we have two eyes. We didn't invent that and they didn't invent it. There is this hyper simultaneous that science needs to have this for order of the mind. It is these five identities of order, these five parts of time. It's forever nature's course. Control your mind. I tell best. Just repent, who disbelieves. So names, they switch the names. Repent, who still deceives. So people don't want to speak online, and what they do, they lie about that too simultaneously. The difference of that is used. So pay attention to where and how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. When you hear with bullying logic, oh, it could only be A or B. Well, what's have to do with the subject? See, there are proofs that there are directions. So they're using all natures of truth to tell a lie, where they won't have that right. Because that quality of fact should be nature won't come through the lawyers, as is recorded, as is actually what is hyper evidentially recorded. It won't come to the three branches of the government. It won't come to the exceptions as the intelligence tied to them. The whole bunch of ways this is recorded. You have to stay with the short words and deal with the predicate acts of WFSB. We don't have to, we could have forgiveness, but we don't have the time for the games because this is intercities at the same time with a whole bunch of names. And these are people that with a crime method of attaching us to fake conversations and pretending we say other things about other people. And they're changing what we say online to hide what was actually recorded. And lying about everything. Every time I speak, always procreate. No, but every speak. And people hear it from Weathersfield Intelligence or Connecticut Intercities now, intercampuses. They've been making up more and more things tied to their roles of predicate acts with the past. The people that was recorded. But these are also increasingly people involved with foreign bodies in ways that none of them realized, where they share their kids, and our kids of Americans are shared there. I don't have any kids. Like a kid someday, God willing. Follow mandate law, please. Me, since before the World Trade Center attack, the Connecticut Intelligence recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles of people who abused kids at campuses I went to, like having me now, having to use people's names I don't even know. They'll tell you they're playing this game. The Wethersfield Police. They're lying too when they're where there's exceptions because after they pretended to the mail, now it's different. See, there's a people that pretend to have conversations with me. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital with the name Leahy and Violet involved with the names of Wethersfield Police, wire crime, switching names, forging names, involved with Hartford Police families through time. Ones with the name O'Brien, wire crime acts and methods with judges and prosecutors. O'Brien Silver recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with corners of buildings and with a Leahy family, drugs and medicines crimes. As doctors supposed to be against that, putting fake drugs and alcohol uses of little kids and of their parents into databases and roles with the difference between them and their colleagues doing it. Harvard Hospital and hospitals throughout the country, like Harvard Hospital has an Institute of Living on their campus. And they're involved with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. These are also people involved with child abusers on Sandy Hook campuses, leading up to that context and sense, and doctors associated with Adam Lanza and with treatments of that, and the courts involved with the uses of Alex Jones, and there are people involved with the Sandy Hook project, Sandy Hook Promise, involved with the FBI further with upskirt pictures, leaders of kids, and intercampuses, intercities, and co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, involved with a whole bunch of names on Central Connecticut State University through time, through elections and with names on off election spots, remote uses of probation officers as collusions with crime scenes, as victims slash hyper victims. But if you treat anyone like, would they try to bring that quality of fact sheet nature to showing the foreign bodies and uses of the differences between the interbranch, all sides in criminal and civil cases. Again, that's it's evidence. So we have to get them on paper in one name in sequence. They want more put fake motivations and backgrounds because there's also one of the things in the list. They're preventing, you know, they're lying about privacy, what they feel about privacy, about and using the truths for lies. And that's also with the foreign bodies keeping that the outcome and what they think we think about privacy or why we communicate or want to be online or heard or not. See, mandated law is supposed to be heard. You're not supposed to attach people to fake conversations with the people made up because they were involved with other natures of predicate acts with people with an untimely death on Trinity College. Trinity College also has people further involved with conversations, and we're not conversations too. The difference between that is used criminally for an influence uh, a leader of the college, of Berger Sweeney of Trinity College, and there are people switching names, so I don't want to use the name. But there's a dean. There are deans that, and their family members, and people involved with probation and with some murders happened. Also, with the people involved with untimely deaths, and they were planting evidences where and how investigators are being haven't been used remotely, criminally for an influence, and tactically delusions wrong. And where and how one of the things that is non-distinctly connecting the people, time uses of ground, location, timing where people are going to be, and the motivations and layers, where and how it assigns the predatory part right where the victim part is, right where the hyper victim part is. You know, that's why we need to keep out in other words, they're not legitimately. These are a whole bunch of judges, family members, and prosecutors, family members involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, criminally foreign influence uses of corners of buildings with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and unions families where kids and adults have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations, planning, acting, time. Two, in other words, fake exceptions of people knowing each other and then uses of it out of the locations where they lock self-value which is also hyper-evidently recorded, our side's roles with the other sides and the difference of that also with the World Trade Center attack and without which followed it. They also have Afghan leaders and kids, and they also have, um, therefore, Iraqi leaders and kids involved with our own. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, and it's also you exploited at other locations, where and how they're pretending people had conversations with them about religions, and where and how the experts on religions are tactically delusions, raw. Again, leaving out the value of sequence, what is said first, and where they're making comparisons and contrasts between the religions and the value of that. We're supposed to have religious rights for our individual rights, not for groups to force punk games and or the individuals who say things they can't go back and be honest about. They offensively pretend to perceive prejudice. People from the different religions still we're involved with the leaderships of the kids. FBI has roles with the tortures of presidents, and or too the difference between when they have self-out rules on their own. And see this, we have to let the hyper invisible lead. Though, you guys, everyone can't do that. So in other words, not one branch was ever free from not one person. No matter how powerful a leader could get, if you over locations, areas, and states that have been criminally foreign influence, only heard that entertain criminally foreign influence positives and negatives of collusion to keep the identity of relationship to nature, sabotage, blame on things other than themselves, while keeping the system of nature. Identity relation and its identity relationship is only keeping the only value of that, not capable of being appreciated by the human fact keeping nature, increasingly at all locations slash s. Space means come out of nowhere. And for where there are cities and people look at that, what can anyone do? All this is owned or whatever like that means to do building. And the buildings as is, though, first we have to examine how the suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, while being to disguise this, while being to blame on while people were with negatives over blaming on other things other than themselves, simultaneously making the only means to cause positives, criminal and citizens natures of it, criminally foreign influence natures of them. Methodically applied, therefore, way worse. A new manifest would be breaching screens, hyper additional apparent motivations for that with suits and ties, counters, and exceptions as collusions, shell game exceptions too, and descriptions of it. So picture a little rap kind of Friends episode. In the cartoon value nature system, they have agencies. And they have an agency that have ones with experts, males and females, on descriptions of crime scenes. And hear it this way: this is America. I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. This is a hypercrime scene. This is that cause slash crime scenes. Those crazy methods, that breaching method that's shared by the colonies. And that was left entrenched. That's where slavery came from. Everyone was sensed through their own per method, an algorithm, relativity databases before they were computers. The republic for which we stand. I'll clap our hands. How are you, Gabe? I missed your comment. I hope you're not here. I'm sorry, missed you. So thank you, people. This is probably too long of a video. 54 minutes. I'm gonna cut it off. You guys should listen, man. 10. Campus Marcius calls us home again. The Republic's campus. We must reveal it back again. Vaccines, I teach us things. Please hear it. Forever nature's cause is more than timeless. Thank you. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. Anthony Wall, Vaccines. I teach us things, also see the shadow boxing, but also see little rap guy friends that are discern that and how they are counter stored. How they are counter obfuscated slash counter hyper obfuscated because the breachy method is obfuscated slash hyper obfuscated. And that too, through our own, it maintains self-value uses slash use slash s of the words, of the names of our countries, by our own and or by others. The difference of that is self-value. The real uses of it, sick, blame the other things other self. Yeah, the means appear. So, thank you. Vaccine is art.